friends. Trisha Goyer here, and I'm here with my awesome friend, Allen Brokken. Now, Allen, you have been here many times. We've been talking about your books, but by chance, if someone has missed you, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. Hi, everybody. I'm Allen Brokken. I'm the author of the Towers of Light series. This is a series of middle grade books. The way somebody has described it to me, it's like Little House on the Prairie meets Chronicles of Narnia.
There you go.
The way I like to think of it is maybe, what if Laura Ingalls picked up the armor of God? So she's running around with the helmet of salvation so she can
Mhm.
take on the forces of darkness. That's kind of the general gist of the series. And so I've been writing that series since 2009, but it hasn't really been out since then. But in 2009, I was traveling for work all the time, and I'd get to the end of the day and call home, and my kids would go, "Daddy, what did you do today?" You know, and I'd be like, because they didn't want to hear about RSA
Yeah.
2048 bit encryption, right? Like there was nothing in my workday that was child relevant.
Yeah.
And so after a while, one night, and you could kind of see this little stuffed frog behind me over my cord.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's Sparkle Frog, and that's Ethan's frog. And one night he was telling me some adventure he was having with Sparkle Frog, and again, I just was out of words. Like it just there wasn't anything to talk about. So I just said, "So, and then what happened?" And he made up
Mm.
something, and then he just kept doing that. And I thought, there, I can connect with my kids. I only need 4 words, and then what happened, and we can have great conversations. Well, that lasted about a week, and then one night he said, "No, Daddy, you tell me what happened."
Whoa.
And so now I'm stuck again. And so what I had to do was like set aside time first thing in the morning when I was freshest to just jot down some idea, right? Something I could talk to my kids about. And so I grabbed their stuffed animals back over my shoulder. You see a little duck and a little kitten. So
Meow
those,
meow. Go meow
yeah,
meow right there.
and I got something to worry about Meow Meow. I'll tell you in a minute. But
Okay.
anyway, Meow Meow and Daddy Duck, those three animals sort of started to have some hijinks in these stories, and then eventually it turned into the first book in the series called Light o' Mine. Um, and I self-published that, and I won't go into my whole publishing journey. It's a whole big thing, but just to say, we're we're on year 7 of
Mhm.
this, and I've got 6 books, so I feel pretty good actually. Like almost a book a year over that period of time, so that's pretty good. Considering full time, I work in sales at
Yeah.
big tech, so like this is only like a tiny bit of my life.
Yeah, I love it so much, and I love that I think so many authors, I think Tolkien started by telling stories to his kids. I mean, I think when we are thinking of the reader and we're thinking of, you're trying to entertain your kids, you have ordinary characters, moms and dads and siblings, but then you have extraordinary characters and creatures and all these different things. It gets the kids' interest, but the family, like the family morals are there. And I think so many times in books that I read, like, well, not that your family has been together the whole time, they haven't, but so many times, like, mom's dead, dad's dead, like all this stuff, and you're going on the adventures, and it's so funny. Every time we start a book, my kids are like, and the mom's dead again, like, or the
Yeah,
dad.
no, actually, that so if I go to a trade show to pitch this to people, right? I say something to the effect of, so our store opens, um, our story opens where the parents disappear under
Mhm.
mysterious circumstances. Because it's middle grade and you got to get rid of the parents.
Right,
Like
right,
in
right.
our
For
story,
a
we got
while, yeah.
now. Granted, in our story, the children do go find the parents and bring them back together, and it's all a thing. But yeah, that's part. I mean, part of the trick about middle grade books is you're trying to give children agency to like
Mhm.
have a reason to be heroic. Because if mom and dad were there, they would probably be taking care of the situation. But I think the other thing that I worked really hard on, I had a tough time with a lot of the media that was sort of being, you know, Nickelodeon or whatever that was on TV. That I really like. We got rid of cable eventually, just because in most media these days, it feels like dad is just an incompetent
Mhm,
fool.
mhm.
Okay, dads are incompetent fools, and moms are just sort of mean. Like that's the general gist
Yeah.
of character development in most of the media, and I'm like, that's not family life. Like I don't care what your general moral background is or whatever. Mom's not incompetent. Mom's actually super competent usually. And dad, neither, dad may do silly things every now because dads like to be fun. I like to be fun. That's why my kids say I'm the cool dad, right?
Yeah,
Like, because I like to be fun, but I'm also pretty competent. Like, I get things
right.
done. I take care of the family. So I had to work out that over this arc of this story of, how do I have mom and dad disappear for reasons that make sense in the story, but then as they come back in, there is this sort of cooperation family
Mhm.
dynamic where yes, mom is in charge of the kids there for a while, but at certain points she needs to do something different and the kids have the right idea, and how do you navigate that in a way that shows a respectful family dynamic like what you would probably actually have, right? And so I worked pretty hard on that. And what's great is I have really good editors. So Kaylin Cummins, who writes the Snow Globe Travelers, and then she's just kind of my writing partner that looks things over for me. She gave a lot of feedback on mom, like making sure that she was a real mom, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And then my actual editor, Sarah Grimm's, her thing was I get feedback like this chapter was horrible. Mom came off like a petulant teenager. You need to fix it. Like, and so I did get a lot of good feedback from others, and also, I mean, I'm a dude. Exactly how a 12-year-old girl is going to work through certain things I didn't know, or maybe I had it off a little bit. And so I think having these other people edit it and give me feedback and all of that. Plus, I had some kids give me feedback. I've got a whole group of kids I call the light bearers that
I
that
love
are
it.
helping me write this that help me fix things along the way.
Yeah, and what I love, you talked about, like, Little House on the Prairie meets Chronicles of Narnia is so much with C.S. Lewis, and then you do it in the book too. It's like we have concepts of Christianity, light and darkness and good and evil, but you're going to show it. Like let's talk about these things. We're going to show it in physical things that the kids are interacting with and people, which I think makes stories for kids, makes these themes that as adults we still struggle with them, but
Right.
they make it easier for them to understand. So I know you did that purposefully. Why did you think that was important so that kids will understand kind of the Christian walk and the fight and the good versus evil as they are getting caught up in these stories?
So I think some of it was at the time I was writing the first book, I was reading this book by A.W. Tozer, called Experiencing God, and it's a little book. It's
Yeah,
not
yeah,
very big. It's a small book, and you would think, oh, I'll just flip through that and whatever. I had to read the book like 6 times. It was the hardest like spiritual devotional book I've ever read because it was so deep.
yeah.
Like
Mhm.
there was so much depth in Tozer's writing about that kind of stuff. And it really changed kind of my thoughts on lots of things as far as it, because it was all scripturally backed and you could pull it forward. It was
Mhm.
good, but it's like, well, how do I share that with my 11-year-old?
You're right.
Right. And one of the things that was sort of a common thread in Tozer's writing was just that the Holy Spirit's a real thing,
Mhm.
right? Like if you had to use like court-based evidence, people's experience with the Holy Spirit is a thing. It's demonstrable. I'm a scientist by like training, like I have degrees and papers and stuff, and I can tell you like my evidence says the Holy Spirit's a real thing. So how do I help kids see that?
Mhm.
And so there's a lot of places in the Bible where you see something to the effect of, and the Spirit of the Lord came upon whoever, Samson or whatever. And so I wanted to represent that in the story that the Spirit of the Lord could come upon you and you'll do something fantastic. And so like in the background you see these sort of armor of God pieces, that kind of stuff, and periodically the Spirit of the Lord comes upon the kids to do something heroic like that's kind of a point. And so there's lots of points in that. Each book has sort of a different underlying theme. So like the first one's about discernment, the second one's about following your conscience, very Christian themes, but at the same time I'm also digging into ways to express stuff. I think the one I don't know criticism I got somewhere along the way, if you notice that Lauren's carrying a spear. Okay,
Mhm.
well there isn't a spear in the armor of God. When you read
Right.
that chapter in the Bible, it doesn't mention spear. Now technically Romans had spears, but Paul didn't mention it. And so my answer to that though is if you look at the purpose of this spear in the story, you could kind of consider it to be the spear of reconsideration. So if
Mm.
you go to the story of David and Saul, Saul's going to take out David. He's going to do that. Like he's bent on it. And what's David do? He goes and grabs his spear and said, "Look, I could have taken you
Mhm.
out, but I didn't because I'm loyal to you. Could you please be loyal to me again?" and Saul reconsiders his vendetta for a while. Now,
Mhm.
granted, Saul falls and all that, but the point of that spear is the spear of reconsideration, because that's a very biblical thing. Like that
Yeah,
shows up there. So I try to do that throughout. There's different pieces and things in the story that represent that kind of stuff.
I love it. Okay, so I'm gonna show the cover of this because it's amazing. So this book number 6 is Demolishing the Stronghold. But I love we talk about, the spear, the sword, the shield here. I don't know if you can see it in the video. Get peer closely. Look at that cloud, or what you think is a cloud. I mean, this shows that ordinary people are doing great battle with extraordinary things, like out of the world, like out of the
Mhm.
world type of things. And I think that's one of the cool elements. And there's like the balloon there. I mean, there's so many cool elements that, and these kids are very ordinary looking kids. You know what I mean? They're not, I don't know. I think sometimes we think we have to have over the top with kids. These are ordinary kids,
Mhm.
ordinary siblings, ordinary arguments, mom and dad, uncle, like all these interacting relationships. But the things that they're called to do are bigger than they can do. Like they need to depend on each other. They need to depend on, like, check, but the spirit's going to come upon them. So I love that you're able to take very ordinary situations, but make it so kids are following along. Interesting story, but also they're learning these truths of the gospel with it. So let's talk about this cover a little bit. And all your covers are excellent. I don't know if you have more there. See, I keep lending your books out, so I do not. I was
I
looking.
don't have, normally the stack is behind me, but I had to take it to an event, so all I have is this one at the
Okay,
moment.
well, it's okay. But
Well, actually, hold on.
go
I can
online.
I can put this up really close. These are the first three.
Yeah. So the covers are beautiful,
Yeah.
and that makes a big difference. Let's talk about this. Like when kids pick up a book.
Mhm.
Adults can kind of overlook stuff if we it's a good story, but they're gonna want to see the characters. I
Yeah.
remember being a kid sitting there, and then I go back and look at the cover, and then you read a little bit more, and then you go back and read the cover, like the whole package. Talk about why it was important to you to just give the whole package. And I know you have workbooks, you have, different things.
Mhm.
So let's talk about this whole package, and you can see just from your room behind you, like visual is important to you.
Yes. Yeah, so I think as far as this cover goes, what I would wanna well, I gotta take a step back. I mentioned Little House on the Prairie. So
Mhm.
my whole world is very much like frontier 1860s US, except there's no gunpowder. So because if there was gunpowder, we don't need shields, right? Like
Yeah.
that doesn't work. So I pulled the gunpowder up, but otherwise, horse and buggy, tin cups, windmills, things like that. Um, and so like normally all of the creatures are like corrupted coyotes or
Mhm.
prairie dogs or things that you would find on the prairie. But I have these readers, and readers tell you as the author what you're supposed to do. And they kept telling me, maybe not you, Trisha, maybe they don't tell you what to do, but
No,
they
I
tell me.
get told all the time, all the
Yeah,
time.
they told me what to do. And my top readers all told me, Mr. Brocken, you have to have a dragon. You have to have a dragon. And it's like, but I don't want to have a dragon. There's no dragons in the prairie, right? But as this is the end, like this is the
Mhm.
culmination of it, and you think to Revelation, the dragon is a theme in Revelations and the end times. It just seemed appropriate for
Yeah,
the end book to have a dragon in it from that perspective. But it's unique because it's a dragon that's made out of smoke, and
yeah,
so
I
it's this
mean, this is
corrupting
super cool
smoke that's a
picture.
theme throughout the story.
I just
And so,
love the
yeah.
picture, yeah.
Oh, and my artist, Lori Ann Weldon, just did an amazing job making that real. Like this is so much what I wanted it to be, and so okay, so I have a dragon now. Well, how are my kids that live in horse and buggy time, how are they going to fight a dragon?
Mhm.
And so I had a real problem there. And so then I thought, well, what flew in the 1800s? And I really didn't want like plot eagles, like the giant eagles that had nothing else to do, so suddenly say that I didn't want that.
Yeah.
But it turns out that hot air balloons, like what you see in the cover, were actually they weren't common, but they were around. In
Mhm.
the 1800s, you had balloons like that, and like they actually were pretty common in the Civil War of all things. I didn't know that, and so they would have these wagons that had a thing called a gasifier that would fill up the balloon. So that was really cool. That was neat.
Yeah.
Um, a lot of research went into that. But then I needed like, okay, so who's going to fly the balloon, right? Because
Mhm.
the kids didn't have one and all this sort of stuff. Well, so the real life now these three kids are my kids, Lauren, Aiden, and Ethan. Those are my kids from when they were younger. But now Lauren, my oldest, is married. She has a husband, Mitchell. And there's this really cute picture of the two of them in this play where she was the Queen of Hearts and he was the king from Alice in Wonderland. And they won't actually hold hands. Like this is many years ago. Like they
Yeah,
both thought each other had cooties, kind of thing.
yeah.
And so anyway, I really thought it would be great if Mitchell could join the story.
Mm,
So throughout the story, somehow they meet Mitchell. Mitchell has the hot air balloon, and that's how they can now fight the dragon in the skies. But I also got to squeeze in this whole thing about them holding hands later that was really fun for me to write. And that's what's great about these stories. Like there are so many little Easter eggs. I mentioned father and mother. There's a whole thing about mother getting a new ring, and that's like a family story and all that. So I love the fact that I could sprinkle in just
mhm.
family things like Ethan called when he was 5 called oatmeal oatmeal.
Yeah.
And I had people like that so much, I had to put out a recipe, like Ethan's original oatmeal, like, you can go download that from my website.
Yeah. Yeah, and I when were getting ready to jump on for this call, I'm like, "There's a kiss in this book."
There
No.
is.
Wait, it's so benign and gentle and sweet. It's not a big deal, but I mean, I liked it.
Yeah, well, it was different, and to be like, I used to talk to people about this. I have this whole group of young ladies that like my stories because they're a fantastic adventure, but there's no kissing, right? Like,
Mhm.
that was what they that was literal feedback I've gotten from multiple young ladies. Um, and, uh, and I really didn't necessarily wanna do that, but because of how the plot sort of built out,
Mhm.
and I don't know how you write, but I kind of write in threads. So there's sort of a thread about Aiden's story and Lauren's
Yeah.
story and all this. But throughout this series, there's this character that's a friend of Lauren's, this giantess named Ty, and I really wanted to have closure with her in her sort of coming to the light because she's been kind of in and out and all that sort of stuff, and so it just really kind of worked out. And I'm really glad that my writing partners kind of nudged me in the right direction because I don't write romance and had no intention of doing that. So it's really kind of this sweet teen kind of, not terribly gushy thing, but just something that's just enough flavor to make the story go well.
It's part of the storyline, but not the main
Yeah.
focus of the storyline. Yeah,
Hmm.
which is so funny because there's so much going on, and the characters are added as you go along with the
Hmm.
series, and you just see them interact with them. And do you ever feel like, I don't know, you could almost step into this world? Like, oh yeah, you're just gonna step in, and they're all gonna be
Well,
there waiting for you.
well, I am in this world. I'm father. Like this
Mhm.
is
Yeah,
me.
yeah.
So there's aspects of my own personality and stuff in there. But yeah, no, and what's really bad about it, like this series was supposed to end at 4 and then at
Mm,
5 and then it finally got to 6 and I could finally end it. But that's because the characters told me to do something else. So
mhm.
this though came to a nice conclusion that's there, but it also left threads open. You mentioned friends, so the kids, the young boys, both end up with friends Logan and Jesse, who are real kids in real life that were their friends. That's pretty cool. But now I'm actually partnering with Logan to write my next series. So
Oh, wow.
this isn't official, but the code name is Logan's Search for the Fruits of the Spirit. So he's a
Mm,
young boy with sort of ADD, ADHD, and he ends up at church on the prairie, and he's between the hard wooden seat and the disapproving stares of the elders in the room. He's not sure that there's much good news going on in this room. But then the pastor says there's some fruit that'll give him some self control. So if there's fruit like that, he's going to find it.
yeah.
And so that's kind of that series. But just to say that what's been nice is we've got some spinoffs, but that also include the main characters people are used to.
I love it. Okay, so one thing you talk about, you're started this full-time gig doing this. I mean, I think so many times people think like after whatever, after I retire, after my kids are out of the house, after all these things, then I'm going to do this other thing. What encouragement would you have? Because it's not easy. Like, it's
Mhm.
not easy for you to take time and then we're gonna work on the cover and then, okay, we have to do printing stuff and there's marketing. But I think just knowing like there's readers out there, there's families that are enjoying these stories. You talk about these young women, coming up to you and telling you about they love it because they're not kissing books and all these things like the impact that we can have even in our ordinary lives is incredible, but we have to kind of follow it. So what encouragement would you have? I know there's people out there that have an idea maybe in their mind or think they'd like to do something someday, but you're doing it. And again, it's not easy, but talk about that a little bit.
Well, I think the main thing is if if God's put a story on your heart,
Mhm.
you have to get it out.
Mhm.
And maybe all that is you get on your phone every morning and you record a little selfie video for TikTok or Instagram, and that's all the story making you can do, then do that, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
But maybe you like to write. Maybe that you have, so write, like writers write. That's what I say to anybody that has it. Just do it. And the more you do it, the more you practice it, the better you get at it, the faster it is, the more it flows. But it's this incremental thing of just, and a lot of people try to overthink it. They try, well, I'm gonna spend 50 minutes a day on these days, and it's like, no, just today, when can you find 5 minutes? And
Mhm.
and it's that daily, when can I find some time? Because it'll just happen. I actually, I did finish a series, and I'm like, okay, so what, you know, can I make? I was asking myself the question, can I put a pin in this? Like, I've done a series,
Mhm.
I've accomplished a thing. Am I done writing? And I talked to a more seasoned writer, and his feedback was, you've done this 6 times. It's just who you are. You can't
Yeah.
not do this. You might do something else. And so my encouragement is, just do it and understand that it may not be a commercial success, but somebody needs to hear your story. And I
Mhm.
think that's what I every now and then, when I'm kind of like, it's exhausted about the whole thing, so there's a reminder that this touched somebody. I got the coolest thing today. I think I have arrived as an author. I think that this is how you know. I had a little girl her mom sent me an Instagram of her dressed up like Lauren from the cover of the first book, like
Oh
in
my gosh.
a blue skirt, white shirt, little belt, and they took a Nerf football and put it on the end of a stick, to like a blue to be this glowing spear.
Mm.
Spitting image of the cover of the book, and it's like, I touched that little girl. Like,
Yeah.
something about that character spoke to her and told her things that Lauren learned about the Holy Spirit in the story.
Mhm.
What could be better than that? So if God's put a story on your heart, just write and tell people you're doing it, because that was the big thing. I mentioned that I had this book at a party, and I had somebody say, "Well, just publish it." Like, I had somebody kind of
Yeah.
pushing me, but I had another friend that heard that conversation, said, "Well, I'll edit it." And as soon as you start putting stuff out there, there are people that will just come to you because that's what God put on their heart too. You just didn't know it.
Yeah, and which is funny, I'm so glad you told that story because the part I was gonna lead into was community, because as I was going, you mentioned all these people, like, look at all these people. You're gonna name all the people that are helping you along. I've met you at Realm Makers. We're
Mhm.
usually, like, heading 2 different
Yeah,
directions. We're like,
we,
"Hey,
we, we're busy.
hi,
Yeah.
how's it going?" Like, as we're both heading to different things,
Mhm.
but the Christian community of authors, they just support each other, they
Oh,
encourage each other, they help each other. Talk a little bit about that, because I think sometimes people think, like, the author, you're have a cabin in the woods, you sit there by yourself, which I've never some
yeah.
days it sounds really, really nice. I've never had
Mhm.
that. But as I'm reading through your list of names, I'm like, "Oh, yeah, I know some of these people," and then I'm like, "I don't know some of these people, but I have other people in my community." Now,
Mhm.
like, we're connected in a community.
Right.
Talk about that, because the body of Christ is meant to, just like in your book, work together. Like, we're
Right.
not, this is not a solo thing. So talk about the writing community.
Well, what I have been blessed with some people I consider to be big writer names, like Morgan Bussey. Like,
Mhm,
I learned about the Realm Makers Consortium from her. She
mhm,
happened to live in the same town as I am, and I read this article she said about Realm Makers, and I said, oh, well, I should go to that and see what that's all about. And I met all of these people that were Christians, but were just a little fantastical like me. They like kind of weird stuff, maybe. And so we got, and that's where I met most of the people in the back of that book, people that can help me. Um, and so there's that, and then the other bit was like, uh, there's other authors there like Wayne Thomas Batson, who's done great classes I've taken, stuff like that. But even just sometimes you go help each other out. So I
mhm.
went to the Cincinnati Great Homeschool Convention with the Realm Makers, and met James Hannibal there. And what was great about that was, within 15 minutes, we built this synergy of, oh, my stuff isn't for your kids, but his stuff is.
Yeah.
And we kind of were passing people back and forth between that. And we just built a great friendship around that, of how do we help each other. And so it's so much fun, though, that now I actually, for the launch of this book, had this book festival, virtual book festival on Friday, called Airships versus Dragons, based on this book cover, right? And so Yeah, and so I found a bunch of fantasy authors that write about dragons and a bunch of steampunk authors that write about airships, and I'm bringing them together to do
That
this
is so
we
cool.
call the super fight, and that's where they basically get some random cards added to their character, and it could be things like everything you touch turns to hummus, or has a shotgun that shoots shotguns. Who knows what their extra superpower is? But you bring them together and you see how the authors are going to battle it out and win, and then people can vote, and there's prizes worth having. But all of that is really in honor of all of the realm makers that helped make this
Mhm.
real, because this wouldn't, like, if you look, you saw that, but this wouldn't exist without
Mhm.
dozens of people, period.
Yep.
Just dozens of people have contributed to that, and likewise I contribute back. I think that's a big thing. But the other thing about it too is, like, there's a lot of partnerships and things I've picked up on. I have these audiobooks. I keep putting this up. This is the backside of it, but in this comes this audiobook player. And so these come with a Bible on it, and so you've got the whole series now. Like, because what's great is Stacy Bradshaw, my narrator, just finished this book yesterday.
Oh, that's so
I
cool.
never had the audiobook come out at the same time as the physical books, but I got it all worked out. So the whole series is now available in print, on audio, starting on Saturday. Um, but this is a great little device. And again, it comes back to that, divine appointments. Like, I
Mhm.
just had so many divine appointments in this walk.
And I love that too, that you have that because I know my younger grandkid or grandkids, I say younger, like, elementary school
Yeah.
age, or even my 13 son, he doesn't have a cell phone. He doesn't have like stuff to play audio on. Like this morning he's listening to an audiobook with Alexa in the kitchen because that's
Mhm.
what he has to listen. I love that
Right.
they have that. They can carry it around and listen to the audiobook. They don't need to have a device or a phone where they would get distracted or do other things that have the story that they can carry around.
Well, and that was really the point. Like my own child had challenges reading.
Mhm.
And so we had to provide, we either had to sit and read to him while he followed along on
Mhm.
the page, or we had to provide audiobooks. And audiobooks were kind of okay, but they were expensive. Number one, if because you couldn't necessarily get everything at the library. But then, oh, there was usually a tablet attached. And how quickly does that tablet that's supposed to be doing the lesson you're reading turn into, I don't know,
Mhm.
Roblox or something?
Mhm.
And so the nice thing about these is it's just the audiobook, but it goes right along with the books. And it's something that especially you've got a struggling reader, or you just want to accelerate your
Yeah.
child's reading. I've done a lot of research on this, and even like competent readers can be helped a lot by hearing while they're
Mhm.
following along. Improves reading speed, improves comprehension, things like that. So there's a lot of value in it just for the language arts bit of it, and that's part we have curriculum and that kind of thing that goes with the whole story.
Yeah, so good. Yeah, definitely check it out. We're gonna give the website at the end. But okay, now that like you said your copies just arrived today,
Mhm.
um, is it almost like, can you believe the last one's out? Like, are you has
I'm in,
the
I'm,
reality
I'm in
hit
a
you?
certain amount of shock, right? Because
Yeah.
in all honesty, I'm so looking forward to this conversation, because you're really kind of kicking off my launch events, right?
Mhm.
I had a third grade class I visited last Thursday, and then I've got your event, and then I got a bunch of stuff over the next week and a half, and then it's done, and it's like, oh, now what do I do? Well, I got to write the next book, but I mean, there's a sense of accomplishment to this, and especially the quality of the, like, I just keep looking at myself in the screen here with that thing behind me, because she did just such a good job of
Mhm.
capturing the action,
Mhm.
right? And so to have that, I mean, it's a real tangible thing that my kids like it too, in the sense of some things have been locked in about them, like the Okamil thing.
Yeah, I love it. It is, and they get to see what it looks like for their dad to follow God, to do hard things, to reach others for with the gospel. I mean, I think it's so important for our kids to see us doing that. We always say like, "Go do great things and follow what God's called you to." Well, when we do it, then they get to see what it looks like lived out. And you talked about you started when they were little at home. Now you
Mhm.
have one that's married.
Yeah,
What a legacy. Like these books are always going to be there. And even that legacy of the little girl who, got the photo of today. Like that's
yeah,
that's always going to be part of her childhood, your stories. I
mhm,
just think it's
right.
amazing that God can use this in that way.
No, it's awesome. And you know what? I have parents ask me, "What about the littles? What about my
Mhm.
littles?" And so we do have a book coming out. Meow Meow milks the cow.
Oh my goodness. I love that.
So we'll do another show. That's probably not for this audience. I don't know that the avid
No,
readers are that
per
interested in Meow
perfect
Meow
for
milks the
Christmas
cow.
presents though, right? Like
Yep.
Christmas presents and
Mhm.
All the things. Okay, so where can people go? Because you mentioned curriculum. Again, I keep lending stuff out. I don't even know where I put all this stuff,
That's fine.
but yeah.
Towersoflight.net
Uh-huh.
is the main place. And if you want to see this festival I'm talking about, it's towersoflight.net/AVD. You'll see the whole festival. You'll see there's prizes. You can buy the whole series, all that sort of stuff. But towersoflight.net's the main place you want to go. And obviously we're on Amazon, and in all honesty, I would love it. If it seems expensive, go to your local library and ask them to get it for you.
Yes.
That's
Yeah.
because right now books 1 through 4 and audio are available in libraries. And in 2 weeks time, everything should be available for libraries.
Yeah, and I think it's so important. Libraries pay attention when people come in and they request books. That's what they
Hmm.
want. They're serving their patrons, and so
Yep.
definitely go in, take the whole list of books, go to the website, write down the whole list of books, take it in there, and then other kids get to find these books and discover these books. Again, and also the holidays are coming up, so
Yep.
the
No,
whole
we're gonna have some great box sets and things like that. So Saturday, there's a bunch of pre-order right now, but Saturday that all becomes like real order. Anyway, these are great gifts. At least that's what the mom that had the little girl dressed up. That's how she got her books.
I love it. Well, thank you, Alan. Thank you for being here. Give the
Yeah, thanks. It's been
website
great to meet.
one more time for us.
Yep.
Go ahead and give that website one more time.
Oh, sorry. Towersoflight.net.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much.
Yep.
Yay.